A dollar coin most people don't even notice, but collectors never stop studying it closely. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're uncovering two Susan B. Anthony dollar coins that still show up in circulation but are often completely ignored. 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar. 1979 D. Susan B. Anthony dollar. These coins feature the iconic Apollo 11 style reverse design, celebrating space exploration and one of humanity's greatest achievements, and are struck in a copper-nickel-clad composition. At first glance, they look ordinary, worn, scratched, and heavily circulated coins that most people mistake for simple pocket change. But in the world of coin collecting, these dollars are often examined closely for minting variations, strike differences, and rare error types that can make certain examples stand out. And here's the surprising part. Some coins that look completely normal on the surface have turned into major collector finds simply because of one small overlooked detail. So before you spend or ignore another Susan B. Anthony dollar, stay with me until the end. Because what you're about to see might completely change how you look at it. Let's begin with coin number 1. It's easy to overlook something like this, because at first glance, it doesn't look special at all. A small, golden tone dollar coin sitting in your pocket change, maybe mixed with quarters, maybe tossed into a jar and forgotten for years. But this specific coin, the 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar, carries the final echo of one of the most misunderstood experiments in modern American coinage history. To understand why this coin matters, you have to imagine the United States at the end of the 1990s. Cash machines were still everywhere. Public transport systems depended heavily on coins. Vending machines filled offices, schools, and subway stations. And yet, the US still didn't have a dollar coin that people actually wanted to use. Earlier attempts had failed, and the country was left with a stockpile of old designs that were slowly being reintroduced just to keep the system running. That's where 1999 enters the story. The Philadelphia Mint struck the 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar not as a brand new idea, but as a final solution to an old problem. This wasn't innovation anymore, it was practicality. The government needed dollar coins in circulation, and the Susan B. Anthony design was still legally and technically valid for use. So production restarted, briefly, quietly, and almost without public attention. By this point, the design already had a complicated reputation. When it was first introduced in 1979, it was meant to modernize U.S. currency. A smaller, more convenient dollar coin. But instead, it became one of the most confused coins in American history. People constantly mistook it for a quarter, and that simple issue shaped its entire legacy. In 1999, the same design returned, unchanged, unrefined, and already considered outdated by many collectors. Yet it still carried deep historical importance. On the obverse, the coin features Susan B. Anthony, one of the most influential figures in the American women's suffrage movement. Designed by Frank Gasparo, her portrait is sharp, serious, and forward-facing. There is no decorative softness here, instead, her expression reflects determination, discipline, and resistance. Around her, the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" frame the design, along with the year 1999 and the mint mark P for Philadelphia. This was not just a portrait choice. It was symbolic. Susan B. Anthony dedicated her life to fighting for women's right to vote in the United States. She spent decades speaking, organizing, and challenging political systems that excluded women entirely. She died in 1906, long before she could see her face on a circulating coin. When her image finally appeared on the dollar in 1979, and again in 1999, it marked a quiet but powerful recognition of that struggle. The reverse tells a completely different story, one rooted not in social reform, but in space and science. An eagle is shown landing on the moon, clutching an olive branch in its talons. This design is inspired by the Apollo 11 mission insignia, the historic 1969 moon landing that made the United States the first nation to place humans on the lunar surface. The eagle represents America itself, strong, national, determined, while the moon represents achievement beyond Earth. The olive branch symbolizes peace, suggesting that even in competition and exploration, the mission was meant to represent unity rather than conflict. This imagery ties directly into the Cold War era, when space exploration was not just scientific discovery, but also geopolitical competition. Every rocket launch carried meaning far beyond technology. It was about identity, leadership, and global influence. And even though the Susan B. Anthony dollar was introduced years after the moon landing, this design carried that legacy forward into everyday life. By 1999, however, something had changed. The design no longer felt futuristic. It felt familiar, almost historical. And that shift in perception is part of what makes this coin so interesting to collectors today. Now, when we look at mintage, the numbers reveal another layer of the story. The Philadelphia Mint struck roughly 29.5 million coins in 1999. Compared to modern coin production standards, that number is moderate. But compared to the massive 1979 production years, it is significantly lower. This makes the 1999 P one of the final and more limited circulation issues of the series. But mintage alone doesn't determine rarity. Because most of these coins entered heavy circulation almost immediately. Banks distributed them, vending machines accepted them, and everyday transactions absorbed them into the system. As a result, most surviving examples today show significant wear, smoothing, and loss of detail. And that is where the story continues, because what happens after a coin enters circulation often matters more than how it begins. Once the 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar entered circulation, its journey shifted from mint production to real-world survival. And that's where the coin's true visual story begins, not in perfect condition under mint lights, but in pockets, registers, vending machines, and drawers where friction slowly reshapes its identity. In heavily circulated condition, this coin often looks far more ordinary than it originally was. The first details to fade are always the highest points. Susan B. Anthony's hair loses definition, turning into a smooth surface instead of fine strands. Her cheekbone softens, and the sharpness of the portrait begins to flatten. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers gradually lose depth, and the moon's surface becomes less textured, almost blending into the background. This wear is not accidental damage, it is the natural result of millions of small interactions. Every exchange, every pocket drop, every coin stack adds microscopic abrasion. Over time, that cumulative effect transforms a detailed design into something much simpler in appearance, even though the historical value remains unchanged. In uncirculated condition, the contrast is dramatic. An MS-63 to MS-65 coin still carries strong luster, with visible cartwheel shine under light rotation. Details in the hair, lettering, and eagle wings remain crisp and defined. At MS-66 and above, the coin begins to show premium eye appeal, deeper shine, stronger strike quality, and minimal contact marks. These higher-grade examples are much less common because so many coins entered circulation immediately after release. When it comes to value, it's important to stay realistic. These are estimates, not guarantees, and market prices can shift based on demand, grading, and collector interest. In typical circulated condition, a 1999 P. Susan B. Anthony dollar usually remains close to face value, often around $1 to a few dollars depending on condition and buyer interest. In uncirculated MS-63 to MS-65 condition, values can range roughly from $5 to $25. Higher MS-66 to MS-67 examples may reach $30 to $100 or more, especially if the coin has strong luster and sharp strike characteristics. However, the most interesting category is always error coins, because here, normal rules don't apply in the same way. A double die error occurs when the die used to strike the coin is slightly misaligned during production, causing letters or design elements to appear doubled. An off-center strike happens when the blank planchet is not properly aligned, shifting the entire design away from the center. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is accidentally struck on a metal blank intended for another denomination. Die cracks form when the minting die begins to wear out, leaving raised lines across the surface of the coin. Die clashes happen when dies strike each other without a blank in between, leaving faint ghost impressions of design elements. Broad strikes occur when the retaining collar fails, allowing the coin to spread outward beyond its normal diameter and lose rim definition. Each of these errors is rare, but not impossible, and they are exactly what experienced collectors look for when searching through rolls or old coin jars. For a simple examination, collectors often follow a basic but effective checklist. First, check the weight, which should be approximately 8.1 grams for a standard Susan B. Anthony dollar. Then inspect the edge. You should see a distinct copper stripe sandwiched between nickel layers, confirming it is authentic clad composition. Next, examine the rim carefully for irregular thickness or weak strikes. Rotate the coin to ensure alignment between obverse and reverse designs. Finally, use magnification to inspect key lettering such as Liberty and In God We Trust for any signs of doubling or irregular engraving. But beyond technical checks and value charts, this coin represents something more subtle, the end of a design era that never fully found its place in public life. The Susan B. Anthony dollar was meant to simplify everyday transactions, yet it became a coin most people barely noticed. And that is where the story turns backward in time, because to understand why this experiment struggled, we have to return to its beginning in 1979, when the idea first entered American pockets with hope, confusion, and unexpected consequences. Before 1999 ever happened, before the final circulation run, before collectors debated its legacy, there was a beginning that changed everything. The year was 1979, and the United States Mint introduced something that was supposed to modernize everyday money, the Susan B. Anthony dollar. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint, this was not just another coin release. It was an experiment in reshaping how Americans used cash in daily life. At that time, the U.S. economy was dealing with inflation pressures and rising transaction volumes in public systems like transportation and vending networks. The idea behind a smaller dollar coin was simple: replace bulky paper dollars with a durable, long-lasting metal alternative that could survive heavy circulation. So the Mint made a decision that seemed practical on paper: reduce size, reduce cost, increase efficiency. But the execution would create one of the most debated coins in modern American history. The 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar belongs to the first wave of the small dollar coin program, replacing the large Eisenhower dollar that had been in circulation since the early 1970s. The Eisenhower design was heavy, large, and impractical for everyday pocket use. The new design was meant to fix that completely. Instead, it introduced a new kind of problem: visual confusion. The obverse design features Susan B. Anthony, again created by Frank Gasparo, the same engraver responsible for several major U.S. coin designs of the era. Her portrait is bold, forward-facing, and surrounded by inscriptions: Liberty, In God We Trust, and the year 1979 with the mint mark P. This was a historic moment in American coinage. It was the first time a real woman, not a symbolic figure, had been placed on a circulating U.S. dollar coin. Susan B. Anthony's legacy as a suffragist leader made her an important national symbol of equality and civic rights. But while the intention was powerful, the public reaction was mixed, not because of her significance, but because of design confusion. The reverse again shows the eagle landing on the moon, adapted from the Apollo 11 mission insignia. The design connects directly to the 1969 moon landing, one of the most defining achievements of the 20th century. The eagle holds an olive branch, symbolizing peace, while the lunar surface represents exploration beyond Earth. This combination of space imagery and national symbolism was meant to give the coin a modern identity, something futuristic, something inspiring, something uniquely American. However, in everyday use, people struggled to tell it apart from a quarter. Its size was only slightly larger, and its golden color was not enough to make it visually distinct in fast transactions. This simple design overlap would become the coin's biggest weakness in circulation. Now, looking at mintage, the 1979 production numbers reveal just how aggressively the Mint pushed this new idea into the economy. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollars, making it one of the highest output years for the entire series. This massive production reflected strong initial expectations. The government believed this coin could quickly become a standard part of daily commerce. But high mintage does not always equal high acceptance. And what happened next in circulation would permanently shape how collectors view this coin today, especially when worn examples start showing up in pocket change decades later. Once the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar entered circulation, the reality of everyday use quickly exposed the gap between design intention and public behavior. Coins that were meant to simplify transactions instead created hesitation at cash registers, vending machines, and transit systems. People would pause, look twice, and often mistake the coin for a quarter, slowing down exactly the efficiency the mint was trying to improve. In heavily circulated condition, the 1979 P coin tells a very physical story of time. The high points of Susan B. Anthony's portrait begin to flatten first. Her hair loses its sharp engraving lines, and facial contours become smooth. The reverse eagle also softens, with feather detail gradually fading until only the general shape remains visible. These worn examples are extremely common today because millions enter daily circulation immediately after release. In uncirculated condition, however, the contrast is striking. An MS-63 to MS-65 coin still shows full original mint luster, with clear separation between design elements. Light reflection creates a cartwheel effect across the surface, revealing how crisp the coin once was. At MS-66 to MS-68, premium specimens can show near-perfect strikes, strong eye appeal, and minimal contact marks, and these are the coins that attract serious collector attention in modern grading markets. Value levels vary widely, and it's important to keep expectations realistic. These are estimates, not guarantees, and actual market prices depend on condition, demand, and certification. Most circulated 1979 P. Susan B. Anthony dollars trade very close to face value, often around $1 to a few dollars depending on condition. In MS-63 to MS-65 uncirculated grades, values typically range from about $5 to $30. High-grade MS-66 to MS-68 examples can sometimes reach $50 to $200 or more, especially when eye appeal is strong or the coin has been professionally graded by major services. But the most unpredictable category remains error coins, where minting mistakes create unexpected rarity. A double die error appears when design elements are accidentally struck twice, creating a visible doubling effect in letters or numbers. An off-center strike shifts the entire design away from the coin's center, leaving part of the surface blank. A wrong planchet error occurs when the coin is struck on an incorrect metal blank, sometimes intended for another denomination. Die cracks show raised lines caused by damaged minting dies, often increasing in size as the die deteriorates. Die clashes occur when dies strike each other without a blank in between, leaving faint mirrored impressions. Broad strikes happen when the retaining collar fails, allowing the coin to expand outward and lose its defined rim. For collectors, examining a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar doesn't require advanced tools at first, just careful observation. The weight should be around 8.1 grams. The edge should clearly show the copper core sandwiched between nickel layers. Alignment between obverse and reverse should be checked by rotating the coin to ensure correct orientation. Under magnification, small details like lettering sharpness in Liberty and In God We Trust can reveal doubling or strike irregularities. Beyond technical analysis and price charts, this coin represents something deeper in American minting history. It was an ambitious attempt to change everyday money, but it collided with human habit, and that collision defined its legacy more than any mintage number ever could. And with that origin established, the story of the Susan B. Anthony dollar now comes full circle, from its controversial birth in 1979 to its quiet final chapter in 1999, 2 points in time connected by one overlooked coin that still hides in plain sight today.